What is up, everybody? It's Lime Boy here. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make house music like Anjunadeep. So this one has been requested quite a few times ever since I started making house tutorials. And yeah, I thought it was time. So here we go. As usual, you can get the project file and samples from this video in the description. And yeah, let's dive in. So the first thing I have here is this little drone that I made with analog. It sounds like this. This one's a bit quiet, but basically the way that I made this is just playing A and C, so just playing an A minor dyad, aka a chord, with only 2 notes. And yeah, so it's just playing that. This is in the key of the track because, yeah, we're in A minor, I believe. Oh, we're in F major, so yeah, A minor works with that. But yeah, so this is just playing this drone. It sort of fits over the chords. If I play it with the drop, yeah, you can hear it. And this kind of layer is pretty important. What this does is it essentially provides like ear candy. Like it just gives you kind of some extra stuff. Because truth be told, if this was just the chords and the bass, it wouldn't really sound that interesting. That's cool, but it definitely sounds a lot better when we add all this other stuff. So yeah, this is just kind of one of those things. So like I said, it's playing in A minor, and yeah, so the way that I made the synth was just with analog. It's a saw wave going into a low pass filter. I've got a bit of an LFO on there, so it's kind of moving. You can hear that. Just gives it some subtle, kind of nice motion, especially when you put it into like a lot of reverb. It can sound cool. And yeah, I just have the amp envelope set like that, and then finally I just have a little bit of vibrato to give it kind of like a pitch warble and sort of bring it to life. So then after that, I have a bit of delay, bit of reverb just for some ambience, and then I have an EQ8 cutting out the low end, and then finally I have this auto pan, which is doing this sort of fake side chaining effect. So I kind of like using this. It's kind of similar to using something like Kickstart or LFO Tool. It's just a little bit easier to work with than side chaining sometimes, because like side chaining things to your kick, it's not always the most reliable. Sometimes you can get weird kind of dynamic things, so I just set this auto pan up to do that. And yeah, so then the next layer we have here is the second drone, which sounds like this. And so this one, as you can hear, is playing the same notes as this one. And they're kind of meant to be like one sound, if that makes any sense. This one comes in a little bit after, you can see. It has like that thing, and then it's fading up with this utility. But yeah, this is just kind of like blending in with the other drone and just adding some nice kind of extra sound to it and some extra texture. So the way that I made this was with operator, actually. I made this kind of like FM pad thing. So we just have a few sine waves. The second one, I added that one harmonic. Yeah, and a sine wave. You can see I have the first 2 up an octave, and then I have the LFO on the volume oscillator B, actually. So that's just kind of giving it some motion. I'll turn off this filter and you can hear it. Like you can hear how the sound is kind of morphing texturally. That is the LFO moving that volume oscillator B, and thus, yeah, giving it sort of more and less FM, and it gives us that cool kind of morphing sound. So then after that, I have an auto pan here, which is not doing any kind of side chaining effect. It's just giving it this sort of like volume movement. If I turn this off, you can hear. Yeah, again, just makes it kind of more like morphing. And then after that, I have an auto filter because the FM can get a little bit harsh sometimes. So I just have that on there to get rid of the really high end that would be getting in the way of other stuff. And then finally, I just have this auto pan again doing a fake sidechain kind of effect. And then this utility here is just for that part where it automates up. You can see it's just a simple volume automation. So the next thing I have here is the piano, which sounds like this. So the way that I have this is basically there are like 2 parts. So the first part is just this like those high notes playing, and that just plays in the intro, and that's kind of like a nice intro. Like it gives you sort of a taste of what's to come, I feel like. but it's not just diving right into everything right at the start. And then in the drop, it plays that same sort of like top line thing, and then it has these chords as well. And yeah, you get the rest. So these are actually just pretty basic chords. I've just done like you can see I have a basic F major there, and then I have F, the root, and C, the fifth, just down an octave. So it's just kind of like that normal technique. If you watch my videos, you know I do this a lot. Where you sort of just take chords and spread them out across the keyboard. It's very important for this style because when you have these kind of pianos, you want them to be really big and like full-bodied sounding. So it's important to really spread the chords out. Like, it's not going to sound that good if you just do this. That sounds a little flat, but this, it's a lot more full. So then the way that I made the sound was with Ableton's Grand Piano. What I have here is, I have Ableton's Grand Piano. I don't think I actually touched any of these knobs. I might have turned up the release. But then on the velocity here, I just set the output high to 64. So essentially, this is just telling it, like, this can only hit a certain velocity. And really what it is it's kind of setting the velocity of everything, because you can see everything is at the same velocity. But by turning the velocity down, it gives it, like, this kind of smoother sound. Like, it just doesn't have that, like, harsh kind of, like, digital piano sound. Here it is without it. So not very pleasant, but with it, it's just a good way to give the Ableton piano that kind of, like, smoother, sort of, like, more like modern classical kind of piano sound. So then after that, I just have a bit of reverb for some atmosphere. And then I have this utility here, because actually the signal that was coming out of that reverb, you can see and hear, was very quiet. So I'm just using the utility for the gain to give it like a smooth, kind of clean volume boost. And then after that, I just have an EQ8 cutting out the low end. And then finally, I have this auto pan, which is doing another one of those fake sidechain effects. I use the shape a little bit to kind of shape it. And so the piano's really not too crazy. Like I said, you can really use any piano. You just want to make sure it has like that smooth, kind of softer sound. So the next layer we have here are actually just some pretty simple piano reverses. So I'll play these for you real quick. So basically the way that I made these, there's also this one here, was I just took the piano, like I literally just took this, duplicated it, and then I froze it. I believe, obviously, I turned off the auto pan for that. But I just froze it. And then what you can do, I'm not going to freeze it now, but when that freezes, essentially what you can do is you can just go through and reverse, like I did the last two chords of each sort of like 4-bar pattern, I guess. So just sort of like these last ones, you just take the audio and reverse it, and you can hear what it does is it kind of makes everything build into the next part a lot nicer. You can hear like you're anticipating that next chord a little bit more. So it's just kind of one of those like tension and release sort of things. That's definitely a nice element, again, with like the kind of ear candy stuff. So the next layer that we have here is this bass, which sounds like this. So this is a pretty simple bass. It's just following the chord progression. It has this nice kind of eighth note like pulsing pattern that I feel like sits nicely with the drums. It feels almost kind of like progressive housey. Like this kind of reminds me of like a Deadmau5 bassline or something like that. The way I made this is just some simple FMs. So I have operator here. I got 2 oscillators. They're both sine waves. The second one is an octave up, because you can see where I have the chorus pitches. And then I have the envelopes, the volume envelopes of those set kind of particularly here. I was trying to get more of like a pluck, so they're just kind of set for that. So then after that, I have the saturator, which is doing a little bit of drive. You can see I have the drive, or a little bit of distortion. I have the drive up there, and I have the depth there. But what it's really doing are these automations. So you can see I have the period of the wave shaper down here, automating there at the end of every 4 bars, actually at the same time as the little piano reverse. And it kind of adds to that, like, adding a little bit more tension thing. Like, you can hear when that bass starts like morphing a little bit. It kind of, it just adds a little something to the sound. It grabs your ear a little bit more, and again, it puts a little bit more emphasis on the tension that's being built on those last chords there. So then after that, I just have this auto pan. It's just doing another one of those kind of like fake sidechain effects. And that's the bass. So the next layer we have here is this little guitar, which sounds like this. So this is just something I recorded. It's just me playing guitar, and I just recorded it straight into the interface. Here's what it sounds like, just completely dry. So yeah, it's just like a simple guitar slide. Again, this is just like an extra kind of ear candy layer. It just adds something nice there. And then what I did for processing was, so first I have this low pass filter. My guitar actually sounded kind of bright coming into the computer. Like you can hear that's a bit bright sounding, so I just wanted to low pass it going into the amp so I wouldn't have that problem. And yeah, so then after that I have this amp set up, so I used the clean amp, the Ableton one, all the settings are just completely stock. And then I use the cabinet here set like this. And yeah, that's just to give it kind of like an amplifier, that kind of sound. The thing is, clean guitar and straight into the interface doesn't always sound the best, so I like to add something like this. Just give it a bit of more like texture. And yeah, then after that I have this EQ8, because sometimes the amp can add a little bit of kind of low end like stuff that I didn't really want. And then finally I just have a bit of reverb, and then I have an auto pan doing again the fake sidechain effects. So again, this is just like another extra kind of like ear candy layer. It just adds some nice sound in the background for those parts. And yeah, so the next thing we have here is this little ARP, which sounds like this. So this is just a nice kind of ARP. Again, it's just some ear candy. It's nice because there isn't really like a melody over this per se. I mean, I guess there kind of is with what the piano is playing, but there isn't like, you know, like a vocal melody or something like that. So it's nice to have an ARP like this, which is kind of constantly changing. And it has an interesting pattern too. It's a bit irregular because if you see, everything here is following sort of like bar patterns like that, like. Yeah, but what this does is you can see it resets here, giving it like sort of an irregular feel when you're hearing it with these very straightforward like one bar patterns. So yeah, so then that's the notes on that. It's just something simple that's in the key. And then for the sound here, what I have is just kind of a nice like FM ARP. I just made it with operator. What we have is a sine wave and another sine wave. Their envelopes set like that. Second one is up an octave. And then I have the LFO here on the pitch. So I have it on a very low amount at 7%, and the rate is pretty high. And that's what gives it that kind of vibrato effect. So then after that, I have this utility, which is just being used to automate the volume in this part, so it can kind of come in a little bit more smoothly. And yeah, then I just have a bit of reverb, and I have an auto pan doing like a fake kind of side chain. So yeah, so that's like a little ARP. Again, it's just kind of some extra ear candy. So then the next thing I'm going to show you here are the drums, which sound like this. So what we have here basically are like, I'll show you the kick and clap first. So the kick and clap sound like this together. And yeah, these are something that I want to talk about because it's very important the kind of sounds you use. You want to go for these more kind of like smooth, almost like trancey kind of kicks with like a really nice punch like this. Or like a nice click to them. And then sort of like these softer, more organic sounding claps I find work really, really well for the style. Like this clap really stands out in this mix. And it sounds good. Now one more thing with the clap, and I actually talked about this in yesterday's video as well, is you can see I moved the beats back a tiny bit, and essentially what this does, if I play it with the kick, you can hear that clap start slightly before the kick, and it's not as pronounced as like the J Dilla kind of effect where you do like something like this, or even something like that. It's just very, very subtle, and when you have these really short, nice claps like this, it can work really well to just kind of differentiate the kick from the clap, because the kick is very clicky, the clap is also very clicky, and if you play them at the exact same time, you can hear like it just doesn't really stand out as well. So yeah, there's that. And then I'll also say with the kick, you can hear in the intro, it's being high passed. So I have this EQ8, which is just automating to be on in the intro and off in the drop. Pretty straightforward there. And yeah, I believe there's also a bit of automation. Yeah, so I automated that to kind of like open up a bit at this part as well. I'll talk more about that in a moment. But yeah, so then I'll show you the percussion here. So the percussion section of this is all sounds like this. And what we have here are basically these two hi-hats which I made with operator, which actually kind of play together. So here's what they sound like together. And then separately, so this one is just like a simple one. They're both just white noise going into bandpass filters. So this first one is kind of like more in the like mid-range. It kind of provides like the body, and then this one is like the high, sparkly, kind of like crisp highs. These two kind of just play together and make one hi-hat. It's really simple to make these kind of hi-hats. All you have to do is just take some white noise and put it into a bandpass filter, and maybe play around with the resonance a little bit, and then use the envelope to kind of shape it. Like you can see, this one is a little bit more open, and then this one is just sort of like a, yeah, like more of a sort of clicky hi-hat. So then the last thing here for the percussion are just these sort of shaker things, which sound like this. So what I have, first of all, are these vinyl hi-hats. So these are just some hi-hats from like an old vinyl break, and what I did was I took them in here. Here's the original sample. So what I did was I took them in here, I pitched them up +6, and I put them through some processing. I have an EQ8 cutting out all that low end. I have this utility converting it to mono, because you could hear there was some weird stereo stuff. And then finally I just have a compressor sidechaining it to the kick. So this is just giving it some nice kind of texture. You can hear it's pretty quiet, but it just adds a nice thing over the shakers. So then the next thing we have here is this first shaker, which sounds like this. So this is just a programmed one. You can see I have this pattern where it's just kind of like got that upbeat with the strong accent. And yeah, this is more of like the sort of straightforward one. It's layered with this loop. And you can hear like either one of them on their own doesn't really fit, but when you put them together, it's a nice combination. So yeah, so I just have this programmed one here. And then like I said, this loop. And there is a bit of a volume automation on the loop as well, because it kind of comes up in the intro. Yeah, so then finally we just have this vinyl noise here, which sounds like this. So it's just some nice vinyl noise. It goes well with this kind of stuff because it gives it, you know, a bit of texture and sort of like atmosphere. As far as effects on that, I just have an auto pan, giving it this kind of fake sidechain effect to sort of go with everything else. And yeah, so then the last thing I want to talk about here is this little effect that I did right before the drop, right here. This is a nice way to act like kind of a cool transition. Basically what I did was I have this really long reverb, I have the K-time there, and I automated the dry wet of that. It's on the master, and then I also had this EQ8 on the master, which you can see is doing like a high pass. And it's just going up, and then it all drops back down on that last 4, like this beat, right before the drop. Just to sort of go back in. Like you wouldn't want to do something like this, where it's just like a straight cut. Doesn't really sound as good to me. It feels a little bit smoother and a little bit more organic when you do it like that. Like it kind of sounds more like if you were just, you know, tweaking a knob or like something like that, doing it more like by hand and with a more human feel. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for this one. You know, I just want to show you guys how to do some of those kind of like Anjunadeep style things. I know a lot of you wanted to know about this stuff. And yeah, so that's going to be it for today, guys. Make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. You can get my sample packs in the description, and you can also check out my social media. It's on the screen right now. It's also in the description. Thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.